Heavy is the head that wears the crown, but never more so than in the kingdom of Wakanda, when Johnnie Torch reviews Black Panther. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another Johnnie Torch Live. This is our 55th live broadcast. You might say live on tape because we are recording this, but it's still live and with little or no editing. All right, so let's get into the Black Panther experience. A very successful movie in the MCU, but did it live up to the hype? And that is the question that everybody wants to know. And that is what we're going to look into for the next hour or so. All right, let's just start off with the beginning of it here. We have the five families, basically. It reminded me of like The Godfather, the five families. The five families of Wakanda. I don't remember the names of all of them, but there was obviously the white ape tribe that was the only one that was sort of set apart, that didn't really play nice with the rest of the tribes. And M'Baku, being the leader of that tribe, is the one to challenge T'Challa, who the film picks up pretty much right after Civil War, where T'Challa is about to take the throne and be the new Black Panther or the new King of Wakanda. Now, that was the thing that I was questioning. Had he been the Black Panther before this, before he took the throne? Because we know he was the Black Panther in Civil War, but I was always under the impression that he put the costume on for the first time in order to avenge his father. I don't know if he had experience as the Black Panther at this point. He probably would have had to because he had taken the heart-shaped herb that gives him the Black Panther powers. But that really wasn't made clear to me. Not that that's a big issue, but um, so he battles M'Baku in this glorious setting. It's very visually stunning. The movie, as a matter of fact, the costuming, the pageantry, the settings are also very beautiful. The settings of Wakanda, also the technologically advanced areas of the city were also very well realized. It made me feel very much like it's sort of a science fiction vibe into it too, and that's what it should feel like. Wakanda meets Star Wars, kind of. You have that kind of Clone Wars, I think, type um, aesthetic, along with the very old school, very almost primitive style. It was a great blend of those two elements, which I found very, aesthetically pleasing. And of course, T'Challa wins the battle, and M'Baku, takes his defeat, rather honorably. He doesn't really kick up a fuss, but he, yields and goes back to his own, kingdom within the kingdom of Wakanda, his own tribe within the kingdoms. Now, there's a very sort of vibe of African mysticism that I think was probably the biggest hurdle to clear, that the film had to clear, because so far in the MCU, they pretty much have kept it grounded. They took the Norse gods, basically, in Thor and the Thor franchise, and made it a lot more approachable by having them be aliens, basically coming right out and saying they're aliens and they're not gods, but they are perceived as gods by primitive man centuries and centuries ago. Of course, they would think that because it would be the first time they'd ever seen such a advanced civilization. But in Black Panther, they don't make any pretenses as to anything other than there exists a panther god named Bast. And again, like I said, this is probably the only thing that you had to buy the concept. You have to just go. You have to go in the pool full force, cannonball in, and accept that. Otherwise, you really can't get with the theme, which was fine. But I felt it was a bit of a departure from other MCU movies in that respect. Uh, so yeah, so we have the anointing of T'Challa, as it were, and it's a very spiritual feeling movie, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later. What it reminded me of, as a matter of fact, but uh, I'm trying to go through this somewhat linearly. to try to cover all bases. Also, we're not going to have too many images on the screen because I don't want to stop the narrative here too much, and I think that disrupts the flow a little bit of the conversation, the one-sided conversation I'm having with you. But so we get the what I call the Lion King zone where where T'Challa gets in the zone and he gets to speak with his father and his ancestors who are represented as Black Panthers because they were Black Panthers in life, and now they're represented as Black Panthers in this afterlife realm that he can speak to them. Again, more of a fantasy element than we've probably seen in the MCU, which again is fine, but it's on a different level. It kind of reminded me of like well, The Lion King, as I mentioned, but like Pocahontas, where it's basically a grounded film, the animated Disney film, of course. But then you still have Pocahontas interacting with a speaking tree, so it's kind of like you have to buy the bit. And as I said, accept it going full forward that this is sort of the norm in this world in Wakanda. So uh, I said before in the Civil War review that I really liked T'Challa's relationship with T'Chaka in Civil War. You get the sense that they really love and respect one another. Now, I made several videos that deal with my frustration with the trope of the hero has to disrespect his father figure before the father or father figure dies in order to manufacture some drama. They did it in Man of Steel, where Clark has to mouth off to Pa Kent. They did it in both Spider-Man movies, Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man, where there's sort of a verbal confrontation with Uncle Ben that leads Peter to feel, remorseful that he was either disrespectful or just sort of not treating Uncle Ben with the proper, respect, given that he's trying to impart to him a lesson, the most important lesson, as it were. And so I like that relationship, that there was a mutual love and respect for his father, T'Challa has. And it's represented very well here as the story picks up, where he sees him again in the afterlife. And he says, I don't think that I'm ready to lead without you. And T'Chaka says, very, very moving, I felt, because the film has a lot of heart. And T'Chaka's response is, you've been with me all this time. If I haven't prepared you by now, I'm not a very good father. And I thought that was a very, meaningful line. I thought that was very moving and emotional. Uh, and I'm glad they brought back the original T'Chaka actor. We see the young T'Chaka as well. I'll get into that a little more when we talk about Killmonger, but right now we're going to talk about the Black Panther himself, T'Challa. And first off, props to Chadwick Boseman. Mad props to him. The man is a phenomenal actor. And we knew this in Civil War. I mean, this is not really surprising that he could, carry this role the way he has. And I'm not really a person that sees a lot of movies. I mean, I'm sort of a sucker for the biopic. So I was familiar with Chadwick Boseman from the Jackie Robinson story and the James Brown story. That's not what the movies were called, but for lack of a better term. And I was very happy when he got the role because I was aware of him and I knew that he could disappear into the role. And that's what he does here so well. You never feel like he's an actor putting on an accent and trying to convey, a character with an ethnic background. He feels like he lived in Wakanda his whole life. He feels like the Black Panther. And that's the highest compliment I can pay an actor when they're a chameleon. When you don't see the actor anymore, you just accept the character without any, momentary lapse of buying into it. And that's what Chadwick Boseman brings to this role. He is fully embodying T'Challa and the Black Panther. And most of the actors have. I think all of the actors in the movie were exceptional. A lot of a lot of subtle shade is thrown at Forrest Whitaker for essentially playing the same character all the time. He plays sort of a Rafiki type character here as sort of the tribal, uh, medicine man or shaman, I guess. Uh, his name is Jiriki or something. I can't remember. I didn't write all the names down, so I'm sorry if I can't remember his name. But he has a pivotal role in the film, and he was good. I enjoyed him because you cast Forrest Whitaker knowing what he's going to bring, and he brought what you would expect to the role. Uh, Before we get off the character of the Black Panther, I also wanted to point out one of the things that I always have as a pet peeve, which is superheroes killing. And we had that great scene in the South Korean nightclub, and that was a real fun scene where it was very James Bondish. That's not something I attributed to the Black Panther. Now again, I'll come right out and say I don't have a lot of knowledge about the Black Panther as a solo character. All the times I read him as a kid, it was in the Avengers, similar to other characters such as Thor, Doctor Strange. My first impression of them was in the Avengers, so I don't really know a whole lot of their backstories. I don't know how accurate to the comic the movie is. I can only tell you if it works for me, knowing the little I know of him from the comics, and if it sort of is in line with the character from Civil War, because I obviously already have a preconceived idea of the character from Civil War. And so Black Panther kills, apparently, in this film. The chase scene, which was an amazing chase scene, that was a great scene. I think he pretty much killed those guys in the car. Now, I can't just let it go without mentioning it because I'm always tough on Batman, Superman, all the other characters when they kill. I think the only thing I could say in the defense of this choice of having him kill without really a whole lot of regard is A, it's not that he kills without any regard, because we see several times in the film that he doesn't make killing the first choice. With the fight with M'Baku, he pleads with him to yield so that he doesn't have to kill him. When he's with his friend Wakabi, I believe was his name, the guy with the blue sash and the blue outfit there, he wants Claw killed because he killed his parents, but uh, T'Challa's response is, "I will bring him back." He doesn't, automatically say, "Oh, I'll bring you his head," you know. So it's nice that they made it clear that he's not a kill first person, That's more of a, and he kind of needed to be restrained when he actually got his hands on Claw, because Claw did kill, you know, several people in his destruction of the Wakandan border. But and the other thing is I think it's the culture. You have to understand the cultural difference. For example, when Captain America kills, I'm always prone to give it a bit of a pass because we know he's a morally centered character. He doesn't kill willy-nilly the same way that I see the that is attributed to Black Panther. He doesn't kill as a first response the same way that, say, Batman did in Batman v Superman or Batman 89, where he just seems to kill and doesn't really give it a second thought. This is not really something that Captain America or Black Panther does. And also, you have to understand, though, that with Captain America, he was conditioned to be a soldier, and he has, that mindset. So if he's on the battlefield and he kills, it's not a crime. And it's a similar thing here with Black Panther, where his tribal customs and the way Wakanda has been run for centuries, it's not a crime at the same level for him as it would be just, for a, you know, character like Batman or Superman, where their moral fiber is, construed differently. So I didn't really have too much of a problem with that, but I had to mention it because, like I said, I always, I'm 100% with you guys. I'm going to give you the real dope. I'm going to give you the skinny, the low down, no shucking and jiving. I'm gonna give you the facts the way I see them and the truth as I believe it. Okay, so let's move on now to some of the cast. The rest of the cast. I think now I'm going to take this opportunity to change the image so that we can show some of the other cast members here. We have, it's pretty much the best picture I could have that shows the whole family, but uh, Shuri, who is Black Panther's sister, she pretty much stole the show. I mean, she was really funny, and she was always fun to see on the screen. I mean, she, was the sort of cue to his James Bond. She was the creative one, the intelligent one, you know, the Felicity, sort of, so to speak. See, the thing is a character like that, who's the smartest person in the room, could be annoying. But see, she played it so well because she's like a little sister, and you expect her to be annoying in some respect. But she was very endearing. And that's another thing that I liked about the movie is the relationship with the family. The same thing with T'Challa and his father. You see with T'Challa and his sister. There is a strong family bond. It's even if they get on each other's nerves, or they uh what's the word, they sort of spoof each other, so to speak. It's all good natured, you know what I mean? It's not malicious in any way. Also, the great Angela Bassett playing his mother. I forget the name of the character, but she was great, very stoic in her performance. And of course, we have Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia, who I thought was great as a sort of a non-love interest. I like that when they do that. When we don't see that all that often. It was led to, it was like subtly implied that there was a relationship between them before, and they didn't go into it too much. But it reminded me somewhat of Pepper and Tony, which is usually heralded as one of the great romances in the MCU. It started very understated. There was no romance, and then it kind of became a romance and so forth. And I felt it was sort of the same here, where she's sort of doing her job and not there to be the love interest. But you still feel the emotional attachment between T'Challa and Nakia, especially from him to her. He feels, the whole joke about "I never freeze," and everybody knows that she impacts him differently than anybody else. That he's emotionally attached to her in a way that nobody else, that he is with anybody else. And I thought that was great. I thought she was great. I didn't think they overplayed her part and tried to make her like co-Black Panther, because at the end when she's taking on Killmonger, when he's got the golden jaguar suit on, they didn't try to make the pretense that she stood a chance. That's always a tough thing when you try to make the leading lady look like she's proactive in doing something in the action, but you can't seriously think that she was going to beat the Golden Jaguar, and also the Dora Milaje, which we'll talk about them too. I don't have a picture of her here, but Okaya, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right either, but you know her as the head of the Dora Milaje. She reminded me in a way of Holida's sister in Wonder Woman, where she's like the greatest warrior of them all and doesn't take no funny business, you know what I mean? Doesn't take no bull from anyone. And she knows what it takes to get the job done, and she gets the job done with a minimum of fuss. She ain't got time for any of that stuff. And she also reminded me of Hamdall in the sense that in Thor, it's like duty is everything. Uh, Hamdall still had to work for Loki, even though he knew Loki was a jerk, so to speak. And it's the same thing here. When Killmonger takes over, she has a duty to the throne, and she doesn't take that lightly. Of course, when T'Challa turns up alive again, that changes everything, because the challenge wasn't over. The challenge wasn't over because T'Challa was still alive, and that uh, uh, the victory that he won, Killmonger, in other words, wasn't legit. So, and we also have her boyfriend there, Wakabi. He was very good. I thought his heel turn seemed kind of obvious. I thought they were setting it up for a sequel, though. I thought he was going to be, because you could kind of tell he was like giving them, he was giving him sort of a cold vibe. He was giving T'Challa the cold vibe, and you kind of felt like he wasn't totally on board with T'Challa's methodology and stuff. And you knew that like he was trouble waiting to happen. Not so much that he was going to instigate trouble, but that he was, well, like he actually did. He backed the wrong horse. You know what I mean? He kind of saw which way the tide was turning, and he wanted to go that way. We're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here, but since we got him on the screen, I'm going to talk about Martin Freeman here. Everett Ross. This was the only area where I might have said that like there was kind of a stereotype, and it didn't ruin the movie for me. But you know, it's kind of like I don't want to be hypocritical because on the one hand, like for instance, when for example, let's say Daredevil, the first season, and you remember when Ben Urich got killed, and you know, you had a lot of people in the black community saying, "Oh, you know, the black guy's the guy that gets killed," and it's sort of a stereotype, it's a trope. Why is the black guy always got to get killed and stuff? And I was like, well, you know, it made sense to the story. I don't think people were playing up a stereotype. I think it was just that, you know, you knew Fisk was going to, you know, come after him, and it just seemed like it made sense to the story. So I don't want to be like, well, they kind of played the trope of the dopey white guy here, and he's kind of, you know, he's kind of emasculated by M'Baku in those scenes. That's the only thing that I kind of felt a little. I don't know if it was like wildly inappropriate, but I kind of felt like, you know, but did it make sense in context of the scene? That someone of the stature of M'Baku would sort of emasculate, you know, Everett Ross. I don't know a whole lot about Everett Ross. He seemed like a big deal in Civil War, but here he was kind of played for laughs. But he did get a good action scene at the end there with the ships when he was flying the, you know, the prototype ship or whatever you want to call that there, that was Shuri created. And I thought for sure he was going to get killed. I thought for sure he wasn't going to survive that. I thought he was going to give his life in service of Wakanda, but you know, shooting down the planes, taking off with the vibranium weapons. But no, he survived. He wasn't a joke, and you know, again, not a big issue, but you know, to touch all bases, I had to, um, you know, pretty much bring that up. Okay, so another thing this picture that I have up here evokes from me was, I said, the spiritual aspect of the film. Now, again, we're kind of jumping around here, but we had Killmonger come back, and the challenge between he and T'Challa. And this image here, it made me feel very much like Ben-Hur. That was sort of the thing I got from it. And I compared it to Ben-Hur in my mind because I have the spiritual aspect going on where it feels like there's a greater hand at play. You know, there's something behind all this at work. There's a spiritual component going on in the way in Ben-Hur it was Jesus being the inspiration to Ben-Hur and God sort of guiding his story along. In the same way here, it seems like, you know, the ancestors or what have you were sort of guiding T'Challa to the place where he was. And of course, you also have the parallels of Nakia is sort of what was Charlton Heston's girlfriend's name? I believe it was Esther in Ben-Hur. Esther. And Nakia is sort of like the Esther. She's taking the role upon herself to protect his mother and sister while he's away. Now, of course, they think he's dead, and in Ben-Hur, he was sold as a slave. And, you know, they don't know really what became of him in either case. So it basically is the same situation. And you have the mother trying to put on a, you know, a brave front, and you have Shuri as the sister sort of, you know, being young and having this affect her, and you could, you know, it's very emotional, especially from Shuri, seeing how it affects her. That you basically see the fight to the death right in front of her. So I like that. You also have the revenge aspect, which is more Killmonger's point of view. That's not something that we attribute to T'Challa in this film, but he has sort of the revenge motive from Ben-Hur, of Ben-Hur, where he's coming back for revenge. Not that he was ever really there in the first place, but you know what I mean. So I thought that was very interesting that I could compare it sort of stylistically, so to speak, to a classic, an epic like that, and it gave it sort of its own epic feel as Ben-Hur. Now let's talk about that battle and get to that because that was pretty cool. The battle with Killmonger. So T'Challa and Killmonger fight to the death, and I wanted to point out the music, the score was exceptional in this film. The score was exceptional. I don't remember the name of the guy. Was it Luden? Can't remember the guy's name. I seen it in the credits because I did want to point out specifically that he did a good job here. But the music is very emotional in this film. One would say that it's very overt in its theatrics, and you can risk overplaying that, but I think that they played it just right because it underscored so many emotional moments that you felt the music. You didn't hear the music, you felt the music. And that's a very important part for a score to play because a lot of times we say these superhero films don't have memorable scores. And in a case like this where I don't know if I would call it more memorable than, Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, but it underscored scenes much better than many of its contemporaries. So that was something I wanted to make sure I pointed out as well. The fight was very moving. Killmonger, again, we'll get to him, the crux of his character momentarily, but uh, he was sort of, just the penultimate, the core villain that everybody really wants to see. I mean, he was mocking T'Challa. He's like, "Is that your king?" And he was very, just plain evil. I mean, I guess I can't think of any other adjectives to really describe him, but he was very evil. And like I said, we'll get into his motivations in a moment. But I would have to say, because a lot of people have put a lot on Killmonger, and we'll get to Killmonger. Let me get his image up here because we're gonna have to get right straight into Killmonger, even though, like I said, we're not taking this quite as sequentially as I was planning, but uh, I don't know if I would say he's the greatest Marvel villain. A lot of people have attributed him to the top two or three. The performance of Michael B. Jordan is spectacular in this film, and I don't think I'd go too far if I was to say that he should get a supporting actor nomination because I think he did a fantastic job here. As I said, he brought that power, he brought that emotion, he brought that raw, you know, pain that was sort of within him out, and that really elevated the role, and that's the point. I don't know if it was written better than Michael B. Jordan portrayed it, because if you look at really the character himself, I kind of felt like it was the same that they did with Caecilius in Doctor Strange. They kind of told us about why he was doing what he was doing, but I don't know if it was really enough. For example, I think like they could have shown a little more of like, how can I put this? Like, we don't really see what happens to his mother. We don't really see like where he came from. We just see the traumatic thing happen to him, and then like he's a villain, and we understand why he's a villain. But it's the same thing that if you're going to criticize Caecilius, if that's how you pronounce his name, Caecilius in Doctor Strange. If you're gonna criticize Yellow Jacket and Ant Man, if you're gonna criticize Ronan the Accuser, um, even Malekith to an extent, even though people say he's probably the weakest MCU villain, but they all pretty much we understood where they were coming from. But it's something else to kind of see that transformation. I think maybe this film does a better job than those other aforementioned villains, but I don't know if I would say that they, sort of displayed that transformation as well as is being said here. For example, I think maybe the Vulture was a bit more fully formed, showing what his progression was. Again, this is all from the first viewing. I don't know. Maybe I'll feel different about it after several more viewings, but I kind of felt like it was just the standard Marvel attempt at portraying the villain, where it was sort of we give you the information, we show you enough to let you know where he's coming from. Now here he is, and they don't really kind of build on it the way that that some of the better films usually do. All right, so let's finish off with the battle scene there. That was a great battle. You get the sense T'Challa's kind of holding back because he's his cousin. Remember, this is also, again, like I said, a family drama in the Shakespearean sense. And he's coming back for revenge. Killmonger is. So he ends up basically he throws T'Challa off the waterfall, which I thought was a great touch. And later on, the family finds him. M'Baku has him, and M'Baku, the man ape. Of course, they never refer to him as the man ape, but that's who he is. And it's interesting because a lot of people made light of Arrow because in season 3, Oliver gets stabbed shirtless in a frosty mountain and gets thrown off the mountain. And miraculously, he survives, and he's like kept alive in the snow and resuscitated with penicillin. A lot of people made fun of that, but then basically it occurred to me while I was watching it, the same thing happens here. And I'm not saying that the idea is stupid, and I'm not saying that uh, they have a reason to justify calling it stupid because it happened in Arrow, but it's basically the same thing. So you can't say it was ridiculous in Arrow if you're going to say if you're going to accept it here. So I bought it though. So basically, T'Challa was found by M'Baku, or M'Baku's tribe at least, and even though he was stabbed and shirtless in a frozen climate, it was keeping him alive until they give him the final uh, heart-shaped herb. I don't remember what the name of that is. They just call it the heart-shaped herb, I guess. That's another thing. So with Killmonger, he destroys all the heart-shaped herbs. Now, I take it that you only need to take that once, and he needed to take it again, of course, because his powers were, divested from him when he was going to do the challenge. That's what they do, so it's a fair fight. But I suppose they don't need to take it again after the first time, because if they did, there's no more. There's no more heart-shaped herbs. So where is Black Panther going to keep drinking this, herbal tea? And I guess that's the reason also why he wanted to destroy it, Killmonger, was that nobody else could take his place. But maybe they could grow it again. Who knows if it just takes time to recultivate that. All right, so let's get to the Killmonger's plot. This is the political area. If this is gonna annoy you, I don't know, but we got to get into the political aspects. This is Killmonger's plot, and it's interesting. His agenda is really interesting. Now, his plan, such as it is to arm black people all over the world with Wakandan weapons, basically for a hostile takeover. That's basically what it is. Now, on paper, that could have been hokey as all get out, but they treat this, very subtly. It's not SJW-ish. It's very like handled with a deft hand. You know what I mean? You get the idea of what's happening, but it's not beat over your head. It's not heavy-handed, and that's all that you can ask for when you're dealing with a important, political sociological thing. You don't want to be hit over the head, but you can see the message of what's being or what's trying to be communicated. Now, Killmonger, when he goes through this vision, because he has the same serum or whatever you want to call it with the herbal tea, so to speak, and he has a vision of his father, and his father wasn't all bad. His father seemed like, now I don't really remember why he was trying to sell vibranium. I don't remember. I guess it was just for a payday because he was trying to support his family. That's probably what it was. I don't remember too well. But you get the sense that he wasn't a bad guy, and that if he had remained alive with Eric, Eric would have turned out quite differently. And that's the great tragedy here, because T'Chaka was the one responsible for creating Eric Killmonger, in a sense. Because that's the great question of the piece, I think. Now, meanwhile, before we get more into that, we also have to see that when T'Challa goes back into the Lion King realm, he sees his father and he confronts him. Now, T'Chaka wasn't all good. I mean, he wasn't perfect. Now, he had a vision of his father, you know, an image of his father, that his father basically did everything right and didn't do anything wrong. But he confronts T'Chaka here, saying essentially, what did you think would happen? You killed his father and you took his father away from him. You didn't bring him back to Wakanda. You left him alone. Like I said, we don't really know what happened to his mother. Was he put in foster care? Was he basically left to fend for himself? They don't really address that, but the point is T'Chaka made the call that he did because he was trying to do the best to serve his people. But did he really do the right thing? And like that's on him, but that doesn't make him bad, T'Chaka. It's like it's a theme that resonates because every generation is basically going to have to fix the mistakes of the previous generation. And it's not the previous generation's fault because this generation, we are going to make our own mistakes. Even if it's not the same mistakes that the previous generation made, we're going to make mistakes. And we can't think of our previous generation, our ancestors, we can't think any less of them because of the mistakes they made, because they were doing the best they could with what they had to work with at the time in history they were in. And it's the same thing here for us. We do the best we can with what's available to us in the time we have. And that's a very honest message. That is not SJW-ish. That is basically, you know, common sense. Now, that leads us to, like I was saying, now, what created Eric Killmonger? Now, Killmonger was created because his own people weren't there for him. That's basically what he says. Now, he's also blaming, like, white culture for oppression. So, Killmonger basically represents black resentment personified. And that's a very brave thing to try to accomplish without making him a caricature. He's not a caricature. Everybody that sees him responds well to the character because they kind of see where he's coming from. You don't agree with him or what he's doing, obviously, because he's the villain of the piece, but you understand because he was made what he is. He didn't spring out of the ground as a villain, and that's what makes a great villain, is when you see what makes them, drive them to do what they do and have the point of view they have the point of view. So it's really interesting because T'Challa then is faced with this. Now, how do you deal with a person like that? Do you throw money at them? Do you throw love at them? T'Challa kind of does both, really. And when they fight, which was a great fight, by the way, I'll talk about that a little bit more before the end, but when they fight, he basically has a level of understanding for him. I think he has a level of pity for him without sympathizing with him. He doesn't think what he's done is right in any way, but he does respect him in a sense that he was made this way. And, the responsibility does lie on the Wakandans. It's interesting because that's what it is. It's not like a black versus white issue. It's basically asking the black community what they can do for their own, which is, a different sort of a take than the SJW take would be. And it's interesting because T'Challa looks at it sort of like, what are we going to do going forward? That's basically the outlook of the movie, which makes it, like I said, a very positive move, a very positive movie, but that's the right move. You're not preaching to anyone. We all know what happened. Again, not to get too political, but the black community has faced a lot of, opposition. We know all about it. Slavery, not being treated particularly well prior to the civil rights era. But we know all this. There's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing that we're responsible for because that's our ancestors. That's in the past. All we can do is look forward to the future now. And that's a very positive message to instill is, don't be like Eric Killmonger. Don't be consumed with a kind of, and he played it so well, Michael B. Jordan. He was filled with like anger, resentment, um, entitlement. Um, he felt that, you know, he was taken advantage of. And did he or didn't he have the right to feel that way? But how did he respond to feeling that way? And that's what it's all about, really. It's how do we respond to the adversity? Does it turn us ugly or does it make us noble? And that's the questions being raised, and there's no easy answers. At the end of the movie, again, jumping ahead a little bit, but at the end of the movie, T'Challa decides to like open up some uh, housing centers, for lack of a better term. I don't remember the way he put it, but he's there opening up places in the community. And at the very end in the tag, he's in front of the UN and he's telling them that Wakanda's going to do more. But I don't know that that is going to be the answer. Is that going to help anyone really? I mean, you hope it does. And that's kind of the message they wanted to leave us with, I guess, when you see the kid coming up to T'Challa and he's saying, "Who are you?" And it's a very like telling thing where Black Panther is going to be the role model that Killmonger didn't have because his father was taken away from him, and he didn't have a positive role model, and that's what Black Panther is going to be to his generation or to the next generation of kids. So anyhow, that is sort of the political side of it. I thought it was I thought it was handled well. I didn't really think it was overbearing. They dealt with it as well as could be hoped for. And what else do we have? All right, the action scenes at the end. There was a great battle with Killmonger. We had the fight in the train station. The magnetic field there was dampening the power. The power grid was sort of dampening the suit's powers, which I love the suit, by the way. I always say this, but the Black Panther suit is uh, one of the greatest looking suits in superhero lore. I mean, basically, you have Spider-Man, which is probably the most iconic. You have a couple others, especially in Marvel. I mean, you might say Batman is probably better in this and that, but in Marvel, I would put him in there in the top three great superhero costumes. And so anyhow, yeah. So it's basically they're both facing each other with the power dampening their costumes, and I also love the way that the costume manifests. Like they put the necklace on, and it sort of just covers over them and it applies itself to them. That was great. I thought that image was great. CGI was great, really. I mean, there was only one or two scenes I thought were kind of off. That doesn't really matter to me. I'm not a big CGI wonk. I'm not going to pick apart CGI, but I think when they were in the Lion King realm there, where he was talking to his father, you could kind of see the background was kind of green screeny. And then when they were fighting, the Black Panther was fighting a rhino there, it was a little off, maybe. But apart from that, I mean, that didn't really matter to me. I mean, how often do you see somebody fight a rhino? I mean, that was boss, that scene as it was. I mean, so I ain't gonna complain. So, and that was really inventive too. I think it was Wakabi's tribe had the like the rhinos domesticated kind of, and it wouldn't attack Owaku. Is that her name? I can't remember. I can never pronounce her name, but it wouldn't attack her because she was the girlfriend of him, and the rhino actually knew her. That was pretty cute. And so at the battle at the end, we have again, like I said, T'Challa has to basically kill him, and it's not a decision he makes easily, but he decides to do it, and he kind of grants his last wish, which is to take him sort of to see a Wakandan sunset. And, it's very poetic. And, he offers to heal him, which, you know, he's sort of too proud. And that's sort of his downfall, I suppose, is his pride. The old saying, the biblical saying, I should say, that pride comes before a fall. And he would rather die then submit. That's basically what he says. He says, bury me in a watery grave, to be with my ancestors, because they understood that dying was better than living as a slave. So it's very strong convictions he had, and again, he was a great character that he resonated with the story. Uh, let's talk now about well, there's one more thing I want to talk about, was M'Baku coming back, before we finish up and just tidy up with the ancillary characters and so forth. But M'Baku comes back. They kind of ruined that in the commercials, in the trailer, because we seen him coming back and holding Wakabi up, and I had a feeling he was going to come back because we didn't see that scene. And I think movie logic pretty much dictated that he would come back, but because it was a great scene where T'Challa's asking him for help, and he's like saying, I could use an army. I really don't think the odds are that good with me doing this alone. And Wakabi's like, no, 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 I'm not gonna do that. But honestly, you kind of could feel that he was an honorable guy. He was gonna stand up and help him. And they kind of ruined it, I think, a little bit by showing that in the trailer. But M'Baku was a great character. He was pretty funny. He brought some of the humor. A lot of people were talking about the humor. Not that this film didn't have any, but a lot of people, and I'm not one to agree, but a lot of people don't like the Marvel style, the Marvel humor, because a lot of times it's what they perceive to be overdone in cases like Thor, in cases like the Guardians of the Galaxy, at least the first film, where it's very overt and you could tell. Even in films that it's not overt, like say Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, there is sort of a pattern of dramatic scene, joke, 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 action scene, joke, 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 dramatic scene, joke, joke, joke. It's not like that here. And a lot of times audiences respond well to that. I don't know why. I mean, it's not like that's not something that ever occurs to me to ruin it. I think M'Baku though was the only time you got that Marvel flavor, because I forget what the scene was, but when T'Challa just came back, and then M'Baku, after like this big dramatic scene, M'Baku was just like, "Yeah, well, I'm bored now. What are you doing still here?" Something like that. And it kind of was like that Marvel humor, and you're like, "Oh, yeah, there you go." But it felt more organic in this film. Let's say that it didn't feel like they were trying to put jokes in. It felt like the characters and the situations they were in basically provided their own humor and stuff. Okay, so let me talk very quickly about one of the characters that I was really looking forward to seeing, and he himself didn't disappoint, but I was a little disappointed with the way they handled him. Ulysses Claw, the great Andy Serkis, and he was great. I just loved seeing him. He was nuts. He was wacko. He was like a continuation of what we saw of him in Age of Ultron, which is what I wanted to see. We got the sonic device in his arm, which I I guess you can't really have it looking like it did in the comics. I mean, he had to hide it in a hand. But um yeah, and he was like funny. I mean, he brought some of the humor too. He was singing, what is love? That was great. And when they're doing the heist at the beginning of the film, and he shoots the guy in the back of the head, he's like, "No, no, go ahead, go ahead. Just don't tell anybody about us. Just don't tell anybody about us." And then he shoots him. He's like, "Hey, I just wanted to look like we weren't professional." So, he was great. I thought he was great, and I was so disappointed that they killed him off, because I would like to see more of him, especially since he's basically T'Challa's arch enemy. But you see, they changed that, and that's one of the things I didn't like. They changed it in Civil War, where he's not responsible for the death of T'Chaka. He's responsible for like many deaths in Wakanda, but it wasn't personally related to T'Challa. It was related to Wakanda, but not to T'Challa. So he's not a personal villain in the MCU, which they already made that mistake. So in a way, he was expendable. Um, I understand why he was killed, because it was essential to the story that Killmonger needed an inn to get into Wakanda, and that's what got Wakabi to his cause. That's what got some of the people to his cause, because he accomplished something that T'Challa couldn't accomplish. He accomplished something that T'Chaka couldn't accomplish, and he brought um, Ulysses S. Claw to justice. So, is it Ulysses S. Claw, or am I thinking of Ulysses S. Grant? Either way, I don't know what his middle name is, but anyway. But yeah, he was great. And the thing is I feel Marvel does this a lot, where they waste their villains. Now, they could have brought him back as a master of evil, or whatever they call. Isn't that what they call it, or is that the DC version? I forget. No, the DC has Legion of Doom, right? But anyway, when you get all the main villains together from all the franchises and you put them together to make a super team of villains, Claw would have been great. But like I said, I understand the story. The story comes first, and the story was what was needed to be served. And I guess he really needed to be killed in order to serve the story. But I felt he got. I think he got better in this film than, let's say, Crossbones. In Civil War, Crossbones goes out like in, what was it, 5 minutes? And I always felt like they didn't really do him justice. It's like, come on, give Crossbones a good, like a Masters of Evil role. Give him like a part at the table of the bad guys, at the evil team. But they really dusted off um, Crossbones really quick. And at least Claw got to do some stuff. And I guess, maybe they didn't see, because I would like to see him get into a costume and really like mess stuff up. But, I guess maybe they didn't want to get Andy Serkis, because let's face it, he doesn't seem to be as physical a challenge as, to the Black Panther as Killmonger. But they could have got around that with some CGI, or maybe put him in a good costume, something clever. But yeah, that was kind of disappointing to me. Didn't really care for that. What I did like a lot was the Stan Lee cameo. I loved that. The Stan Lee cameo was hilarious, and I'm gonna miss Stan Lee not doing them if he ever stops doing them, or heaven forbid, is taken from us. But they're at the casino, and Stan pulls the chips over to himself and says, "I think I'll just keep an eye on these for a while," because T'Challa wasn't even concerned with the bet that he placed that he won, and that was just like so funny and so Stan Lee-ish, and it was a great moment. I mean, it wasn't something that was one of the more blink and you'll miss it cameos. It was something of some substance, which was pretty cool. It was also very funny. Um, Now, I'm going to talk about a couple of things I didn't understand, or I felt were sort of plot hole-ish. For example, now all the Wakandans had that code imprinted on their lip, the inside of their lip. And I can understand that, but how did Killmonger have that? Because he wasn't uh, born and raised in Wakanda, but he still had that when he showed Claw the inside code there, for lack of a better term. I didn't understand how he got that, and that was kind of confusing to me. Maybe there's an answer I didn't notice when I seen it, but yeah, that's about it for my notes. Really, we got the film was well paced. Like I said before, I heard the criticisms of this film was basically there wasn't enough action and it was not well paced. I thought it was well paced. I didn't feel bored at any time. I thought the action scenes were good. I will say the action scenes were actually great, but I think if I was to criticize the action, the one thing I would say was the final battle between T'Challa and Killmonger. The only thing that disappoints me, and this is true of all superhero films when they do this, is they cut to the other battles, the other things going on too many times. This reminded me of like what I didn't like in The Dark Knight Rises, when I was really looking forward to that rematch between Bane and Batman. And the fight itself is great between Bane and Batman, but the rematch is always what you look forward to more than the hero losing the first time. And in both cases, they focused really a lot on T'Challa losing, and they focused a lot on Batman losing. But with the return match, they're going to John Blake on the bridge, and they're going to Jim Gordon at the bomb and stuff. I wanted to just see that fight straight out. Just give me 10 minutes of them fighting. And I felt the same way here. I was like, no, don't cut back. I know that's what's going on over there, and I know that's cool. And I want to see that either before or after the scene. I don't want you to keep cutting in between because, we had to see what was going on with Ross. And we had to go see what was going on with M'Baku and Nakia, Shuri, all that stuff. But that I kind of, because it helps when you want to see it, especially when you get the DVD and you want to just see that scene again. I do that a lot of times with, like, for instance, I'd love the fight with Logan and Lady Deathstrike in X2. Oh, when I got that DVD, I played that back a dozen times. And it's great because it's not broken up. You just see that one whole battle, and you just can put it in, pop it in, and just, enjoy it. I also enjoyed seeing, like, a lot of the battles that are like that. You can just pop them in the movies on DVD and just see it. But then when it's an instance like this, you got to keep fast forwarding, and you're like, oh, I overshot it. Let me rewind. It's difficult, but I understand what's going on. Overall, Ryan Coogler did a great job, a fantastic job. He didn't, like I said, overplay the heavy-handedness of the subjects or anything. I got to give props to him. He did a great job, that which nobody can deny. And let me get the last image I had prepared up for you, because this is going to be the image on the thumbnail. So I want to get it on screen for you. Oh, that's such a great costume. I love that costume. It looks so great. So yeah, that basically just about wraps it up. If I'm going to give this a... Oh, we got to talk about the after credit scene. I want to throw that in real quick. The after credit scene, of course, this is all spoilers, by the way. A little late now, an hour in, to tell you that it's all spoilers, but I'm sure it'll be in the title description there, so I won't have to worry about any angry fans. But so Bucky Barnes is in the because this was something I actually... the last image of the film had gone by with T'Challa in the UN, and I said to myself, "Gee, they didn't even address Bucky." I mean, Shiri makes a joke at some point about the guys, but they didn't address him. And I said, "Well, if Killmonger's taking over, what's Bucky doing at this time? Is he still frozen? Because if Killmonger found out about that, then he would have just dumped his frozen body in the river." That's actually another thing, that Bucky survived that incredible fall in the first Avenger. And that's another reason why, it was believable to me that, because remember, T'Challa didn't have his powers when he gets thrown over the waterfall. So, you know, this was something that, already had precedent in the MCU. But anyway, we got Bucky back, and he looks great. He's, healthy and restored. And obviously the programming that the Baron Zemo put into him, or whoever the Russian programmers were, is not in play anymore. And Shuri healed him of that, cured him of that. And so this is where we're going to pick up with Infinity War, and we'll just take a brief second to look at what could be happening here. I guess they moved him to a place of safety where he could recuperate, and he was only frozen, I guess, long enough to get his like I said, condition reversed or eliminated, so to speak. So that's probably where we pick up in the sequel. In the Infinity War, is where Bucky is already stationed there in Wakanda when Thanos shows up, and probably T'Challa comes back by then. Maybe Steve will be back. Steve Rogers will be back at that point, because we see a lot of scenes in the trailers between Steve and T'Challa. Also, where does the franchise go from here in Black Panther 2 is a interesting question, because they had two villains, two strong villains, really. Claw and Killmonger both die in this film. I don't know anything about his adversaries in the comics. I believe Manape was a main adversary as well, but he seems like more of a frenemy slash ally in this franchise, in this continuity. So I don't think we're going to see that. So, if you have any idea who Black Panther's newest villain will be in the sequel. I'm sure there'll be a sequel. I'm not sure if it's official yet, but let me know in the comments below what you think, and let me know what you think about Black Panther, the motion picture. Now I will give it a ranking, a score. As far as a ranking is concerned, I don't know. I mean, I probably will rank it when I do a ranking video for the other movies. I would probably say this is not on my top 5 because there are just too many great Marvel movies. I mean, I love Avengers. I love Civil War, and he was great in that, Black Panther. I love I don't even know if maybe Thor Ragnarok would be up there in the top 5. I love The Incredible Hulk, which is sort of a underrated classic there. I love Captain America First Avenger and Thor are also big favorites of mine. So I would imagine this would probably be as I anticipated, probably in the lower 10, you know, around 10 and stuff. That's where Doctor Strange, Ant-Man, where they are. It's sort of middle of the pack for me, kind of. But like I said, that's mostly because I'm not as familiar with the character. And it's like I place him more with the characters I'm not familiar with, like Doctor Strange, like Ant-Man, like Guardians of the Galaxy. The first Guardians film is probably around that area. But who knows? When I revisit the film, I might be able to decide a little bit more accurately where I'd put it, because that's what happened with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And I had that dead last. And after watching it 2 or 3 times, it actually I came around to it more. And I still think it's one of the lesser films, so to speak. Um, but you know, I would raise it a little bit more in its ranking. So you know, who knows? I have to wait until I get a full ranking video up. As for score, I will give Black Panther 4.5 stars out of 5. That's 4.5 stars out of 5 for the Black Panther. I always repeat it, and if you want to know why I repeat it, it's because sometimes the audio cuts out once in a while, and I don't want you to see the whole video and then say, "What was the rating? I didn't hear it," because I can't put the score on the screen anymore, and since I'm not doing scripted videos as well anymore. But this was fun. It was fun to go through it without having to just write a script and do it in 10 minutes like I used to do. It's fun doing it this way sometimes. And so let me know what you think in the comments below about the Black Panther. And, uh, you know, I think probably I'll wait to do that ranking video until at least after Infinity War, because that is sort of like the penultimate, the moment of the franchise just before they do what will be surely the climactic episode, which is the sequel to Infinity War. It's not titled yet, so I think I'm going to hold off for that. But that's it. The last time I did a ranking video was after Spider-Man: Homecoming, so I didn't involve Thor Ragnarok or Black Panther yet in that. But uh, we could look to that probably after Infinity War. So once again, this is Johnnie Torch reminding you, Wakanda forever! And I'll be with you again real soon.